And with me in the studio right now is Marc Goldschmitt, who's CEO of Goldschmitt & Associates, a VA Vector Prime contractor. Marc, thanks for joining us.
Dave, thank you.
Give us an overview and perspective of the message you wanted to get out today.
Today I want to take a look at bringing together some of the ideas that all of the speakers presented, particularly those from Stan and from Tony, and bring together some of the ideas that have been presented in the various Vets TV webinars.
Webcast webinars. Vernacular is loosely used.
Essentially, I think the basic message is that veteran procurement within the federal government, and I'm going to talk mostly about the federal government, is a team sport. Guys like me have been there, done some of that, but I couldn't have gotten there and done some of that without the help of other people like Stan, Tony, and a number of other veteran-owned small businesses. Tony mentioned his GSA Mentor Protege program. I was a protege. I picked up a lot of good information, and one of the things you learn very quickly is what you don't know, and you get there quicker, and it's a lot easier to learn from somebody else's mistakes than to learn from yours. And it's a lot less painful, takes a lot less time, and can save a lot of energy. Stan mentioned pieces about financing. Understanding financing is extremely important for whatever phase of the business you're in. Stan mentioned some of the stuff of working capital, and that's pretty much what you need when you start out and you're going to go to where you hopefully make your first sale. There's some other pieces that may be included in working capital or other places, but there's mobilization funding. Now you've won something, all of a sudden you got to hire a bunch of people, and you don't have a mechanism necessarily for that capital. So it's either got to come out of typically the working capital, which means you've laid that out for a long time based upon your strategic plan, or it can come from other sources of funding. Then once you have that and you start to invoice people, you can do what Dave said before, factoring, asset-based lending, but essentially you're using your receivables as collateral. So how that is, how that works, and the strategies to get there comes back to the Mentor Protege program. Find somebody to help you. They can be in different industries and different areas. When I talked about the team sport, again, it's you got the players, you got the coaches, you got the managers, you got the trainers, the administrators, the front office, the commentators. You may say boo to the commentators, but there's all the folks there, and in each one of those areas are areas where you have to have some knowledge, you have to bring some experience, and the equivalents are marketing, business development, operations, HR, finance, money, and you can see the importance, and there are different levels of importance in different areas. So as you start looking at those pieces, one of the things that Stan has talked about, that Tom Lenny has talked about, is this idea of procurement ready. And what does that mean? And I'm going to say it means different things to different people. There's 3 different basic models that I'm aware of, probably more, or paths to get there. One is a who do you know, who do you like, or who do I like, who do I trust, and how do I get to you? And you can look and say, you know, there's a good old boy network out there, and they've done that, but they did their homework. So the real, and I hear from a lot of people, well, how am I going to compete against so-and-so because he's got this big, massive portfolio, and I'm just a little guy. Well, the thing to remember is those guys with the big, massive portfolios, 10, 15, 20 years ago, they were sitting in their garage in the same place that you are. And if they asked the question, how do I, they probably would still be in the garage. But if they ask the question, this is how I can compete, and this is how I can build my business, you start getting into the concept of procurement ready. And it means different things at different times. If you're a startup, procurement ready may mean you can go for simplified acquisitions. Those are acquisitions that the government does below $150,000, set aside for small businesses. It's a low risk for the government, it's a low risk for you, and it's a chance to get in the door and earn your stripes. Then you may go on to other businesses, other contracts where you're doing $1 million contracts, $5 million, $10 million, but it's progression. And I've seen too many people that say, I can do the $5 million contract, but they have no way of being able to demonstrate that they can do that. So the who do you know, who do you like, et cetera, but there's a path to get there. two that, that I'm aware of. One was mentioned, which is a mentor protege. You can have somebody get you there, and it's not just the mentor protege, but it's subcontracting. It provides a very safe path to get and learn the ropes, learn the details, and at the same time earn that past performance, which is going to get you in the door for the next bigger thing. One of the companies that everybody I heard in IT say, how can I compete against? Systems Made Simple. Like a couple of years ago when I first met them, they were a very small business, under a couple of $1 million a year. They started out at VA with one half-time person and grew that into a multi-$100 million business. They did it, you can do it. So it's again learning from those that have been there, done that, and how do you do that? The other piece is looking at the context of market research. So when you look at you've all heard of Kingdomware and the Rule of Two. So as you look at that and how that's really implemented, there's a process that the program office goes through, that the contracting officer goes through, to start looking at what's your capability, what's your compatibility, and what's your risk. And I'll define those. Capability is your technical capability to do a job. Compatibility may be the contracts you have. It may be the relationships you have. It may be the certifications you have. It may require ISO. It may require CMMI. So when you start looking at opportunities and you start building this through the who do I know, this is how you can get in and start talking to people and understand this is what the requirement is. So if they require ISO and you don't have it, why pursue it unless you have a partner that can help you get there? So it's a short-term, long-term strategy of where you want to go and how you want to start off taking a small bite of the elephant as you go. When you start looking at things like the summit, you've got pieces where you've got education and you've got implementation and that cradle to grave that was talked about earlier. So when you start looking at that, you can start and get, what do I need to know? And again, the mentor comes in there for these are things you need to know. If you go down this path, these are the things that will bite you. And as you go through that from the education process and get into the implementation, you'll learn things from the implementation. And if you're like me, you're going to get a bunch of stuff wrong the first time you do it. And hopefully not the second time you do it. But you learn from your mistakes. And again, the mentor. It doesn't have to be a formal mentor-protege program. It could be just a friend. Well, what do you do in this situation? I wear out my phone talking to people. Okay, here I am in this position. How do I dig myself out? First thing they usually say, stop digging. But after that, it's here's how you can put together the thing, and here's where you are. Here's how you got there. And here's how you can reconcile the different pieces. The process of things like the summit is how you can start to integrate all of these pieces. One of the important pieces is how do you learn how to talk to a partner, how to talk to a government decision maker. There's certain things they look for, and it ain't, hi, I'm a service-disabled vet, and I can do anything for anybody, anywhere, anytime, cheap. And if you don't believe people do that, sit in the booth of one of the decision makers, sit in the booth of one of the big guys, and you'll see that that's the predominant theme. Every once in a while, they'll find somebody that gets the message. Here's what's keeping you up at night. Here's what you need. And here's how I can solve your problem. With that, I'm going to go ahead and open it up for questions.
Thank you, Mark. Al, I'm going to turn it over to you. Any questions from Mark? Oh.
There you go. You can't read my lips over there?
That's the most I've heard you say in a long time, Dave.
There you go. Dave controls my mute button, and he made a point to make sure he can do that when he has the luxury to do so. So anyways, what I was alluding to is this is the second time you've been on board. You're a Vector Prime. Definitely want you to talk a little bit about that. But ultimately is the need to tell folks, this is the 7th session, as David announced early on, all pre-summit training. You cannot do enough pre-deployment stuff. February 27, 28 is the deployment. And to that point, I heard JPL about hub zones. Veterans need to find out where hub zones. But here's the real crux of it all is our benefits from the VA. We're going to have a full-blown VA team out here that's going to do 2 days of claims. Because if you're just a veteran, you might have a disability. We're going to have that ability to take your claim and so forth. But tell us about the Vector Prime update. Do you have anything?
For Vector, the primary issue right now is the open protests. There are 2 current protests that are open. One that was filed back November, which a decision is due within about 30 days. And that was protesting only one of the service groups. Then there was another protest that was filed about a month ago that addresses a protest for all 6 of the service groups. Because it was a GAO protest that was filed timely, which is within 5 days, there is a stay so that they can't start until they resolve these 2 GAO protests. There's also a couple of agency protests, but they do not create a stay. So once these 2 GAO protests are resolved, they will be able to implement a notice to proceed, and you'll start seeing efforts that come out on Vector. The initial emphasis, it's going to be, I'm told it's going to move slowly as they build up the expertise within the contracting group. It'll be those groups that are supported by the Strategic Acquisition Center, which is in Fredericksburg and Frederick. And that is, to a large degree, the headquarters operations. They'll go a couple of service groups at a time. And once they start building up that expertise and in the contracting shop and the management, then they'll start opening it up to a wider audience and other VA opportunities. What I would encourage you to do, particularly if you want to join a team and you're not a prime, is do your marketing with the folks in VA that you know. If there's opportunities in learn what the service groups are. There's Service Group 1, which is basically procurement and project management. Service Group 2, which is analysis. Some other pieces. Service Group 3 is training. Service Group 4 is your outreach. 5 is logistics. And 6 is HR. So as you know those, know which area you fit in, look at the list of the primes in that area, and that's posted in multiple places. Contact those people where you have something to offer. I'm in service groups 2 and 3, which is the analysis and training. So don't contact me with HR requirements. Be focused. And don't contact me and say, I want crumbs from your table, I just want to join your team. You need to bring something to the table in terms of capability or opportunities, and you'll get a much more warmer welcome, whether it be from me or from any of the other 68 primes.
It's very good. And in a case like Joe Busligo from the biosecurity company, he would look under the supplier category of the 6 areas and the service groups. And I must say, I'm impressed that you listed them off like that. You knew them right pretty well. That's very good. Al, any other questions for Mark?
No, Mark, I know that you have reasons you can't come to the summit, but we definitely want to welcome you back at VETS because you provide a wealth of information, you keep us current, and you keep us on point. Thank you.
Thank you.
Mark, thank you for joining us.
Thank you.
Appreciate it. Al, so we'll close it out. Give us an overview. And Mark, before you leave, people want to find out more about Goldschmitt and Associates. Where should they go?
www.goldschmitt, Goldschmitt, that's Tango, no D.com.
Okay. We'll put that up on the screen, and thank you again.